We'd like to thank Mainspring Companies for sponsoring Season 1 of The Next Entrepreneur. Mainspring celebrates the entrepreneurial journey, and we are very grateful for their support. There's one last thing I wanted to, as it relates to your father in his book. He kind of summarizes it towards the end. If I have learned one thing in life, it is that there is truly no such thing as impossible. In the world where possibilities are endless, a man can indeed rise from the potato farm in Colombia to save a president. He can travel to a foreign country with only enough money to get to a bustling city like New York, enter a world where he does not speak the language, and then rise to millionaire status. If these things are possible for a man like me, then surely the word impossible does not exist. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm here today with our producer, Mr. Daniel Sagona with Propel Productions, and excited to introduce our guests, Carlos, Ana, and Sebastian Alvarez with Alvarez Construction. Welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be here.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
I am excited. You guys are one of the largest production home builders in the state of Louisiana, and you're celebrating your 30th anniversary. So thank you for coming in. It's just been amazing to watch what you guys have accomplished in that time, but particularly the last 10 years. It's really very impressive. But I wanted to start talking about your company was founded by your father and your mother, right? Who were from Colombia, and actually all three of you were born in Colombia, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Your father wrote a book, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But I wanted to start with a quote that he had from an early life lesson that he learned from his father, Papacito. Am I saying that right?
Yep. Yeah, you got it.
So, and how do you say your father's name?
Jairo.
Jairo.
Yep.
Okay. So Jairo is 15 years old. He's not quite turned 16. And he is decided to go to military academy. And Papacito is taking Jairo there. And you can tell in the book that he's filled with anxiety, as you can imagine. And he asked his father for advice. And I love this. Papacito said, be very disciplined about following instructions. Before each move you make, ask yourself if what you are doing is right, and then do it faster and better than anyone else. That's all you will ever need to be successful at whatever you do. And I was like, oh, man, because you saw that throughout the remainder of Jairo's life. But I also see that in the next generation, in you guys, because it looks like, I mean, I don't think that you could build any faster or any better than what you guys are doing right now. So I just love that sense of legacy. So let's talk about Alvarez Construction, like where you guys are today. I'd like to try to paint a picture for our listeners and viewers and get them to have an understanding of what you guys have going on. So can y'all help me with some of the numbers, like number of homes built maybe last year, the communities you're working in, number of employees, those type things?
Well, I can talk. We have currently, Andrew, we have coming up online this year, we have 12 new communities, exclusively Alvarez Construction communities in a 4-parish area. Our target goal for homes to be delivered this year is close to 450 homes. And we are at the office close to 40 employees. This is office personnel, team members. And if you were to count the number of subcontractors on the field, working exclusively in our job sites, you're looking at close to 500 people. Last time that I checked a couple of years ago. Yeah. So it's a large operation.
Yeah, 450 homes is spectacular. So let's talk about the division of labor here, like what each of you do in the company.
Okay. Well, I am currently the CEO of the company, and we try to find we work very closely together, and sometimes when I kind of stay
our desire zones,
our desire zones,
so and we map it out.
Yeah, we map it out. So I really love the interactions with developers and working on land acquisition or lot acquisition, and also love the fact that dealing with the plan design. So all the subdivision plans and amenities and all that, I really enjoy that part of it. And I also enjoy the interaction with the customer and the sales part of it. So I also look over the sales and the marketing aspect of it. So that's a big desire area of mine. And Anna can share about what she likes to do.
So I'm currently the CFO. I manage all the administrative functions, I guess, per se, for the company. With our accounting team of like 4 ladies. So we handle all of the administrative. I'm basically the money lady.
Right.
So Carlos and Sebastian, they find the pinpoint the community that we're going to purchase, and then I handle all the bank stuff, make sure we have appraisals and bank loans and all of that ready to close and ready to start paying bills.
Yeah. That's a lot when you consider all. I mean, you've got not just
all the financial stuff.
Well, not just the land development side of it, but I mean all of the accounting on the vertical construction. It's a lot of lumber and a lot of everything.
The number of checks that her and her team process, and the number of BPOs and invoices that they received, and the way that they pay them is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So I found myself in the COO position. So I'm Chief Operating Officer, and I've always liked to figure things out, long-term type of projects that no one else wants to do, and you have to keep trying to find the end result. But so I like the people aspect of it too. So I like kind of feel myself as a little bit of the gatekeeper of the team. So I also manage the construction department, but also the human resources department. So within the construction department, we have the purchasing team. So we have to have the purchasing team in order. So Anna's team works in fluid too. So so that's my roles and responsibilities. And with my landscape background, I also help with the designs of the subdivisions a little bit and make sure the engineers are doing what they need to do.
So you guys have made some strategic hires in the last few years,
yes.
Right? Let's talk about how those have helped you grow and improve your company.
Well, we have done some very, very what you call important hires. We recently, within the last year, we hired a vice president of construction. It's a role that basically I was also doing in a sense, right. And we hired a gentleman with a lot of experience, and it's really been quite refreshing to see some new perspective and some new ideas, and it's helped us, especially during the pandemic, and now that we're gearing up towards 450 homes. He's doing a wonderful job. So we hired this person. We also hired a human resources manager. It's a person that came from a Fortune 500 company, and that's helped a lot. There were some things that changed with her employment, and she had to leave, but that was a big hire that we did for most of the year. And also we've done some major improvements on the accounting department. So we're trying to get to, I guess, what we would call the next level. Yeah. And we need to hire some people that have had some experience and have actually done it. So I think we're very excited about that.
It kind of goes back to the story aspect of it, right? It kind of goes back to we're a family business, right? But we had, as of 2 years ago, a pretty big transition where you look around and we're kind of doing every single job. Carlos was managing the entire construction, the entire warranty department, entire sales department. I was just out putting out fires, making sure Carlos wasn't going to go crazy, and Anna was needing to find her place in accounting. So in 2019, we really made the decision to reevaluate what do we really enjoy doing, And then that kind of allowed us to revisit our organizational chart and kind of really do strategic things there instead of just running around trying to do things and now executing things.
Well, I could see where that by executing on that, it would make you not only more productive and more efficient, but happier at your job.
Well, yeah.
You know, it seems like that would be a bold move there. So your father passed away in 2014, 2013,
August 3rd.
and your mother, is it Anita?
Anita, yeah.
Is she?
Oh, she's very well, doing well, healthy. Yes.
She's chief operating officer of Sunshine.
Yep.
So she comes to the office and she spreads her sunshine, and that's her job role. She's the one that's really figured it out. The owner relationship, right? So she's the owner, but gets to have fun.
I imagine Hiro is beaming down on her and celebrating her happiness.
Yeah.
So your father wrote a book, No Such Thing as Impossible, From Adversity to Triumph. And his memoir is very defining. And what comes through in the book to me is his love of family, right? His love of country, both Colombia and the United States. And he was super proud of his dual citizenship, right? A military man, a man with a tireless work ethic, an accomplished cyclist, a businessman extraordinaire, a grateful and spiritual man, a philanthropist, and a man passionate about achieving the American dream, right? And you see that laced through the entire book. It was a fantastic read. His journey was so fascinating. I did want to dive into that now. So the adversity that he talks about in the title of the book certainly refers to his extremely humble beginnings, his upbringing. So Anna, I was going to ask you if you can tell us what you know about his early years in Colombia.
So my dad was the second oldest of 11 kids. And
and I guess a little emotional. You want me to take it?
Yes.
You want me to take it? Okay. So my father was, like Anna said, number 2 of 11. He's a very, very humble upbringing in a little town called Sonson. That is, you would call it a town, but it's actually back then it was just basically a village. High in the mountains, gets fog all night long, very damp and very cold. It was known in that time for great weather to grow potatoes. So my grandfather didn't have any much formal education, but was able to go to the equivalent then of a Votech school. This is going back in the 20s. And he went to a Votech school and in agriculture and learned some techniques a lot about growing plants. And he developed this technique to grow and flourish in the potato farm, farming potatoes. And he went and got initially a little farm. And basically, after that, he started renting plats from neighbors, not buying, but just renting plats from neighbors. And then he would go and have a harvest, and then he will pay the neighbors with part of that harvest. Yeah. So it was very poor, no running water, no electricity, no. They heated the house with burning.
Stove.
With a wood stove, and it was very, very difficult upbringing. My father did go to school. They had a little escuela, and he went to elementary school and started going to the equivalent to high school. But life at the farm was very difficult.
They were hardworking. I mean, they were like.
This is remember, this is in the 30s and 40s, right? So this is where kids woke up in the farm. They went and did their farm chores in the morning, and basically went to school at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, school then was just 4 hours, and then you went back basically to finish up your chores at the farm. Yeah. It's a very difficult upbringing. I mean, that's the way that it was then, right?
Yeah. And well, he tells a great story about his cow right? Sebastian, you know this story.
I do.
And tell us about his cow story.
So, going back to all the lessons that Papacito gave Dad, it almost seems like he was already setting Dad up for business transactions. So it's like, hey, here's a cow, and you can do whatever you want with it. And so Dad wanted a bicycle. So basically, Dad took care of his cow and sold his cow and was able to buy a bicycle. And that did bring him into his cycling career, because in Sun Sun, they have this mountaintop. And so it was customary to get all the kids around the area and race to the top of this mountain. And so Dad would do it with his brothers and his cousins. And it's kind of neat. The Alvarez side of the family, us cousins, we've gotten together and started a WhatsApp group. And we're pouring in pictures. And I was able to find some real old pictures of Dad on that bike racing to the top. And that's one of his first bike races that he won. And actually, they were barefooted in some of those pictures.
Yeah.
But he became a very strong rider.
Yeah,
riding
he did.
those mountains.
He did. So he rode a lot over there. And then while he was working as a top executive in Colombia, they had a race called the Classic of Executives. And those it was a classic race. So all the top executives would race on their bikes, and he would win pretty often. So we have all the pictures of Dad winning all those races. And
so it's a lifelong love of his bike riding,
Yeah.
which is transitioned to.
Yeah. But going back to Dad's work ethic, I mean, once we came to the U.S., I mean, he really put that on halt, trying to get the business going. And Dad didn't really touch the bike again until maybe his late 50s. Yeah.
So at some point, it looks like in the mid-50s, Papacito took Jairo to see the Colombian president, Pinella, who was visiting a nearby city. And it was the first time that Jairo had seen the Colombian presidential guard. Right. And these guys were sharp. These military guards were in.
With white gloves and pointed polished helmets. I mean, it was.
They were the Secret Service for the president.
Right.
There wasn't any other guard.
Yeah. And the helmets were so ornate and beautiful. And at that moment, that's when your dad realized, that's what I want to do. Yeah. Right? That's me.
He actually, and there was a letter that my father actually wrote to his dad once he joined the military. And he said that actually the military, because my grandfather warned my father that the military was going to be very difficult. And my father actually wrote a letter to his dad saying, I think that living at the farm was even harder. And he was a very grateful, grateful. It was just kind of a very interesting letter. It was just like
for his 50th anniversary. He wrote a letter.
No. This letter he wrote it from the academy. Oh. Yeah, and it was kind of almost like, you prepare me for this. Right. Like I am okay. It was life at home was harder. Not in an ugly way. It was like I'm prepared. Yeah.
So, but military academy was, man, that was tough. Because, I mean, there was so many things going on, so many stories in that book of tragedy. But there was one story, I'm not sure if any one of y'all remember the story in particular, but he's a young man. He's in the academy. And he gets in trouble and he ends up in
Hueco.
Yeah, well, we can tell the story. So what happened is that, keep in mind that my father actually went and finished high school in the military. Right. And then, so you live in the barracks, and then you go to school, and then you also have military school. So it's almost a hybrid between some type of an ROTC academy, something like that. Yeah. So my father hated languages. Not that he hated them, he found them very difficult. Right. English was very challenging for him. French was very challenging for him. In the military back then, French was what they thought it was, that what the people in the military needed to learn. Yeah. And he got in trouble because he decided to put some conjugation tables a little cheat sheet for French behind a ruler, and because he was not prepared because he hated languages. And he had this cheat sheet for some conjugation tables, and he got caught. He got caught in class, and he was sent basically to the hall. And he was sent to a hall for as punishment for I think it was a week or 10 days, something like that.
But I mean, this hole.
This is water and bread, right?
Water and bread, darkened room, dirt floor, no toilet. I mean, this was what I would call solitary confinement.
It was,
right? I mean, this is.
Yeah. He was. There was actually a bike race, because then when he was in the military in high school, he was part of the athletes club, and he rode bikes, and he was very, very good. So there was a big race coming up, and my father was basically in the hall. And actually they took him out before in order for him to race. But his friends knew that he was not going to be in very good shape for the race, because he had not eaten. So they actually started folding, smashing bread and other goodies in handkerchiefs, and actually sliding it under the door the last few days in order for him to get some extra nourishment.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting story. But my father has a very mixed, when he told the story, it was very mixed feelings, because the end of the story was great. He won the race and all of this. But the fact of the matter is that they caught him cheating. And he shouldn't have done that, right? It was ill-prepared, and it was terrible.
So
not a good example.
And I think the way the story went was that if he won the race, then he wouldn't have to finish his time in the hole.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
And so he got out there, hadn't eaten enough, but he just crushed the competition and got his sentence commuted there. So
it was a great incentive.
Oh my goodness. Okay. How about we take a quick break there and get in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, and end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. And we are back. We have Carlos, Ana, and Sebastian Alvarez, and we're telling these stories about your dad from his book. It's just fascinating. But your dad had set a goal on becoming first lieutenant, right? So he leaves the academy, finishes the academy. Now he's doing his ranger training. There's some amazing stories of how grueling and torturous that was at times. But there's one particular story that caught my eye. You know the story I'm talking about, where he was prisoner training. Can someone jump on that one? It was.
You can jump on it.
So what happens is that back then, Colombia was in a civil war, and they were actually fighting guerrillas back in the 60s, and they were actually training these people to make sure that, because they were actually in actual fights, they were going to be taken and they were going to be interrogated by the guerrillas, and so there was a lot of training done into making sure that they were going to be able to survive and properly defend whatever you knew and survive that interrogation. So there was a lot of training done specifically to try to break you down physically, mentally, emotionally. So they would go with days without any water, without any sleep, and just mentally and physically exhausted and hungry. And then they were forced to actually bring buckets of rocks from one edge to from a field to the other edge, barefooted, with stumps and rocks and all of this, and just for hours, just bring a bucket from one side to the other, and just to mentally break you. And then at the end, as you read on the book, it talks about someone walking in with some water and purposely just dumping it as acting like they were tripping, and you can imagine them just looking at this water spilling on the ground.
So they're famished. They think this bucket of water is coming to, you know, for them to get a drink.
And included all kinds of just torturous exercises, physical torture, digging your own grave, being buried alive to your neck. They would tell you, okay, we're going to give you a chance to escape, so you have to try to escape. That's part of the training, and they would allow them to escape, and then they would go and try to hunt them down, and then they were basically almost naked on their underwear, basically running away at night, and other people trying to chase, you know, their friends just chasing them. But I mean, the idea was a cat and mouse, just trying to see if they could show that they could survive. So yeah, it was very interesting, but just very difficult stories. I think that the most, not painful, but for me as a little boy, that impressed me the most was when my father was talking about the fact that some of his friends actually lost their lives, actually in training, or just mentally could not handle it and ended up killing themselves. Just sadly like what you see here in the military sometimes.
Yeah. And it was several. There were several instances where he witnessed.
Next to his bed.
Yeah. The guy, and lost his mind. Yeah, yes. and also some of the accidents that happened where families got hurt. It was very sad and very just painful.
And he paid the price. He did the training, and he ended up in his goal of becoming first lieutenant and making it to the presidential guard.
That was a dream post for him, and the fact that there was it was actually fairly large group, but for him to end up being the leader of
presidential guard.
The presidential guard, that was very, very, that's a huge responsibility. And the president was a very colorful figure, to put it mildly, right? So he was a gentleman that never stayed put in one spot.
Presidential palace.
In the presidential palace, and he was always running away in the middle of the night to go hang out with friends and drink and party. So he would sneak out of the presidential palace, and they would come to my father and say, "Where's the president?" And said, "He's sleeping." I said, "No, he's not." And then they'll have to go chase him down. So it was very difficult. He really enjoyed it, but then at the end, it kind of created their own challenges for him.
Yeah. So he served 2 presidents, I believe.
Yes.
And the one you're describing there is
Camargo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Camargo was the first president he served, right?
Yeah. So no. So actually, yeah. So what happens is that he goes and he's serving the president, and then he decides to. Do you want to go into a story of when they reached out to him and the coup, or?
Yeah, I would. That was fascinating. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So basically, the as he tells it in the book and more in person, where he went to a greater length, he was invited to some parties, and he noticed in these parties, it was parties during the weekends when they were off, and he noticed that it was not mostly, but all men all the time, and they would be drinking very high-end liquor, foreign liquor. It was not the liquor that typically people drank, and also back then a lot of the men smoke, and all of them smoke foreign cigarettes, Marlboros, and which was also it was just very odd. And then he found out that basically what this group of people wanted to do, just basically take over the government and it was a military coup. Some of them have previously served, and there were some paramilitary people involved in it. And
So they had identified your father as the guard
the gatekeeper.
that was closest to the president. He was the one person on the inside that could potentially hand the president over
To this
to
group.
them.
Yeah.
So they tried to befriend him, right? Inviting him to these parties, and it was a months long process, as I read. Right?
You know, it's kind of neat. Dad would always say that, you know, in order for him to do the right thing, he had to risk being treasonous, because the moment that he went in to talk to these guys, immediately guilty of treason, because he's already playing along.
Right,
So then,
so maybe back up a little bit, because they're going through these parties.
Right.
They're building a relationship with them very strategically over months, right? Until it comes the night and he senses something's going down. And these guys put their guns on the table, right?
This is the plan. So they basically share some of the plan with him, but not entirely.
Right.
And then he was very mixed emotions, and my father was about doing the right thing. And he thought, and even in the book he talks about his conversations that he would have in his mind with his father about doing the right thing. And he went to his superiors in the military, and initially they didn't believe him. And then they said, well, this is obviously extremely serious. You're going to have to go back and record all these people. And my father started doing so, attending all these parties and recording. And then he would come home to the barracks in the military, in the presidential palace. And it was his job to sit down after coming from these parties after hours and start documenting everything, and then submit it to his superiors exactly what happened, and copies of tapes and all. And then at the end, my father found out that even his roommate, they had casted his roommate because he shared a room in the presidential palace, and his roommate was casted or asked to basically spy on my father.
Oh no!
That's making sure that my father, what he told, what he wrote, just basically keep an eye on my father, because they thought that maybe my father was going to be a double agent, right?
Yeah.
So my father was promised by the bad people, right? The people that were doing the coup. He was promised a large sum of money,
Like
and
$1 million pesos.
$1 million pesos. Yeah, that's a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
And also they promised him a military post overseas, because their goal was it was a military coup. So actually the role of a military ambassador. And obviously that did not happen, right? So finally, and the military said, we will provide you complete protection. You're going to basically rat on all these people, give us all the information, then we will stop the coup, and then we're going to whisk you away, and we're going to go after these people, and you will never have to confront them. They'll never know it was you. So he felt like his life was gonna be fine. And then at the end, everything happened, and what the military said that they were going to do for him, they didn't. And it was very difficult for him personally.
I mean, his life was threatened regularly.
Yeah.
And the stress that he was living through was unbearable.
They turn theater, where they do the orchestra and the ballet theater in Bogota. They turn it into a court, into a criminal military court, where they brought all these people. And my father was center of the road, pointing all these people, saying, yes, you told me this, you were going to do this, this is your role. He became the star witness. And then after all these people, actually, some of them got let go, then all attention turned into my father and trying to go after him.
Yeah. So it was pretty clear at that point he had to get out.
Yeah.
Right. There was something that happened prior to that, and it was an interaction with President JFK at the Columbian Palace, which I just found fascinating. Anna, do you remember that?
So my dad was the presidential guard for the Colombian president when JFK came to visit.
Yeah, and what struck me was that was maybe the point where the American dream was first planted in his mind. Is like he had tremendous respect for JFK,
Right.
And being that close to him. I mean,
An American president, that's
yeah,
pretty incredible.
yeah, and so when you think of him, now he's got to leave the country. Now he's got to save his life. He's got to get out of that scene. He was being targeted. So, I did want to ask you, Anna, if you can talk to us about his journey to the U.S. and then what his first bit of time in the U.S. looked like.
Yeah, so after he left with $100 in his Ray-Ban glasses on the way to Miami on a cargo plane, he sold his sunglasses, and his brother lived in New York, so he figured it would be best to be by family.
Right.
So he landed in Albany, New York, and he attended.
Not speaking English.
Not speaking English. He wanted to go to school, and so they wouldn't accept him because he couldn't speak the language. Right. So he got several jobs, worked at a hospital cleaning all the sutures and all that nasty
all the equipment
stuff.
coming out of surgery.
Yeah, and then his brother was his roommate, so they rented a little room, and they would cook just
potatoes and carrots on a little kerosene in the hallway.
I mean, he was making
Right.
like $1.15 an hour.
Yeah.
Back then.
Right, and then what was funny is he thought he was purchasing tuna, and come to find out his neighbor, the lady that they were renting the room from, said that wasn't tuna, that was cat food.
Cat food.
That's
And
why
go-
it was so cheap.
And going back to Dad hating languages, like Carlos said, he didn't get accepted into the business school at first because the director said, "Hey, well, you can't speak English," and he said, "Okay, well, I'll come back." So he would go to the park in Albany, and he would talk to a statue of Moses, and he would practice speaking English to the statue. And his dad's joke was that all the homeless people that were maybe crazy, were thinking that he was crazy. And then he went back to the school and applied again, and that's how he mastered the language. And I think that also one of the things that you get from Dad is like that constant like self-talk, always talking to himself. He always talks about it in his book, and that continual drive to learn something no matter what.
Yeah, and he got his degree.
He did.
So he got his degree, and the day that he graduated, he left his cap and gown, and he flew back to Columbia.
He was done. He had
He
his degree, and he was done. And
He was done. And
He
so
was taking a little bit of a toll in his health. He was in a rush. He had lost a lot of weight. He was very, very stressed. He was going to school, finish up school. He had basically 2 jobs, living in a 1-bedroom apartment where the heat was actually by open the oven and turning on the oven and moving the beds close to the oven door. It was.
What was the story of the old lady that allowed him to stay in the room? It was for a nursing. It was for old folks, and he had to talk his way into.
There were so many stories, Sebastian.
Yeah.
There's a story that my father shows up like this second or third day in the apartment, and then in the building, a lady goes and finds a roach in her apartment, and they said, "Oh my God, we never seen a roach like that. It must have been that Colombian guy that moved upstairs with his brother," and they wanted to kick them all out because the lady saw a bug that she's never seen before. I mean, there were all kinds of stories.
The best one was the lady that saw that him and his brother were hungry.
Yeah.
And she was like, "You need to get a job at a
Holiday Inn.
Holiday Inn
Where there's some food.
Where there's food.
Some fruit,
Right.
some free food. Yeah.
So he made his way all the way from sous chef, well, actually,
Dishwasher.
dishwasher
Yeah.
to chef.
He was the guy that put his notes on the dishwashing machine and would study as he was cleaning dishes. His time occupied his time 100% to achieve every single goal.
He worked his fingers to the bone.
Yeah.
And so subsequently, when he finished his degree, he was not in good health, and he made it back to Colombia, right? But he couldn't go. He went to
Medellin, yeah. He was in Bogota when he left. He came back to Medellin. By then, everything had quieted down, and he also purposely did not really get in touch with any of his military friends.
Right.
It was not actually that he did not make those connections. It was, in fact, after he wrote the book.
Yeah, he purposely wrote the book after a lot of people in that coup had even passed away.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Really.
Because he wanted to make the book successful in Colombia too, and so if everybody's still alive, it might not have been a good idea.
So and he never he didn't really stay in touch with any of his friends from the military throughout his years. Very, very few.
Now and nowadays we even my mom still champions staying in touch with his graduating military class. So we provide some funds to make sure that either the military people from his class, the widows, are taken care of. Anybody that has a cancer treatment, we make sure that his comrades are still taken care of.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
So, but when he gets back to Colombia, things had changed, right? And
he's got a degree in business administration, and then ultimately, and I don't know how much time we have, but his last job was as a controller for a company, a subsidiary in Nabisco, and it was called Landers, and this company made a kitchen equipment and appliances, a small countertop type of appliances. His boss is a gentleman, Mr. Walter Raymond. He's now deceased, and very, very nice man. They had a wonderful relationship. The gentleman never had any sons. He took my father as his son, basically. The relationship was very close because of the fact that out of the entire firm company with maybe 700 employees, my father was the only one. Not only he was very senior, an advisory to the president, but also he spoke English. So they were able to have this wonderful relationship, and Mr. Raymond enjoyed the fact that he could talk to my father in English and no one knew what they were talking about. Yeah. So it became very, very handy.
Yeah, they had a special relationship.
They had a very special relationship.
But I sensed in the book that when he got back, things had changed, and like he began to miss being in the United States. And I was going to ask you this, but then he meets your mother.
So he wanted to come. Ultimately, he wanted to come back to the States, right? So he goes. So how he meets my mom? So he went to go bring his brother to a girls' graduation party because there was, having a party.
Right.
Well, it was my mom's graduation party. So he goes to her house to drop his brother off. And
Dad had scheduled a date.
He had a date.
He was on his way to a date.
And his little brother needed a ride to a party.
Right. So my mom opens the door to let his brother in. And my dad she was like, come in, stay for a little bit. My dad went in and...
The joke in the family is that his dad's date is still waiting.
That's an awful joke.
It's hilarious, though.
So 6 months later, they were married.
Oh, that's amazing.
And a year later, Carlos was born.
So, he was kind of, before you met your mother, he was kind of ready to get back to the United States. So things had changed. He meets your mother. And then ends up staying for 15 years.
And then, that stopped because the idea of coming to the United States really did not pick up until we started with the drug problems in Colombia and in the U.S. of the 1980s, right? If you remember back then, that was the growth of the narco-terrorists and all that. Right. And he said, I want to provide my children with a better future. So that's when all the drive was to come back to the United States. And I was 14 and I was 10, 9. Sebastian was just basically a newborn.
I was two.
Yeah. Well, yes, you were 2 when we arrived. 84. Yeah, but it took a couple of years, almost 3-4 years, to actually make it here because get our visas and all.
Let's take a pause here, get in a word from our sponsor, and pick that up when we get back. We would like to thank Modus for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Who is Modus? Modus is a facility services company that works in the e-commerce fulfillment industry across the United States. What do? They like to say they take it from the conveyor to the dock door. Well, what does that mean? It means that they're building the pick stations with the cable management. They're installing guardrails and bollards. They're putting down floor marking. They're putting up aerial signage. These guys build fencing systems, shelving systems, and racking systems. They also do rack recovery for when there's rack failures. They also install dock levelers and dock doors. Modus also installs ASRS systems, which is automated storage and retrieval systems, as well as other robotics projects. They've worked for the largest e-commerce retailers in the world, and they can work for you. If you need to find Modus, you can reach them online at modusmoves.com. And we are back with Carlos Anna and Sebastian Alvarez. And we were talking about your father making it back to the United States with the whole family now. But there was something that happened in Colombia before y'all left. And he had inadvertently ended up building a house or finishing a house. And then that kind of took on. Tell me about his home building in Colombia.
Actually became almost a home builder by accident, in the sense that he went and hired an architect, bought the land, hired an architect, and hire a builder. The builder-architect relationship is very different there. Mm-hmm. And then after...
Just to build your family home.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And then after a while, he saw all the red tape and all the delays, and he was a little bit of he was a person of action. He said, "This is going to cost me more," and so basically what he did is he fired all of them, and they said, "I'm going to subcontract the entire house myself." And then he went, and obviously he had a full-time job, but he wanted to build his personal home. And then we actually moved into that home. And we were leaving the home. I remember it was a weekend, and someone came and actually knocked on the door and asked my father how much he wanted for the house. and my father just kind of looked at my mom and
he doubled the cost.
He doubled the cost, and the gentleman said, fine. And my father said, well, hold on, I'm a numbers person, I'm a financial guy, I'm a controller. What do you mean I'm doubling my money? And he said, there might be an angle here. And he sold that house, and then he decided to build another one. He was smart, a little smarter this time. It was not a house for us. The second house was not for us. It was for sale. We actually moved into an apartment while he looked for the perfect lot for us. And then actually, that's the way the construction company actually started in Colombia. And then he went and actually hired his brother. His brother came and joined him. He also had a full-time job as a veterinary professor at a local university. And between them, they ran the construction company, and they started very small, building one house at a time, and then suddenly it was a couple of homes. And then at the end, they ended up actually building apartment buildings. So it kind of grew until it was time for us to come to the United States, and then he closed basically the business.
So he gets a family to the U.S. now, and you guys make it to Baton Rouge. right? Your
Yes.
I guess it
Yeah.
would have been
Yes.
your aunt lived
Yeah,
here.
so it was in the early '80s, and because of the drug situation, like Carlos had mentioned, that Dad wanted a better education for us, and the way that Dad used to always tell me about it was that, you know, he told my mom, "I can make it anywhere in the United States. Where do you want to go?" And so Mom happened to have a sister living in Baton Rouge. Her husband got transferred from Columbia to Exxon,
Yeah.
and so that's how he made it here. So it was just happenstance that we ended up in Baton Rouge.
Good thing.
Yeah.
We got here because of the fact, like Sebastian said, my mom had a sister, but also my father's experience with winter. My father still had his brother in Albany, but my father did not want to bring us to, that bitter winter, and he knew that my mom was not going to be happy there with no one to speak Spanish and all that. So
So your family gets here, and your father gets in business again here, but not building this time.
no, when we came here back in '84, if you remember, the economy the economy overall in Louisiana was in the
Dire straits.
Dire straits. Yeah, I mean there were subdivisions basically abandoned. Right, builders were building homes basically at cost to get out of the loan of the lots. So my father's dream of starting a construction company just kind of quickly vanished. Right, and he needed to do something. Obviously, and someone sold him into this healthy, trendy idea of yogurt. If you remember, the yogurt shop was was the future, and we actually opened a yogurt and sandwich shop. And my father worked some incredible amount of hours, some tremendous effort, but he always had his eye open for construction, and I'm very grateful. It was very difficult work, but he taught me how to speak English. It taught me how to treat people. How
Because
to
you all
set-
worked there, right?
We all worked there, yeah. That's where we learn English. Part of it, that in school, of course. Anna worked there when she was 12 years old.
Sebastian, I guess you did.
Sebastian,
I ran around a little bit.
Sebastian, Sebastian spent some time there.
Dad
on
would bring my
Saturdays
bike to the ice cream shop in Gardier, and I'd ride my bike in that parking lot where Dorothy's Soul Food is, until 11 o'clock at night.
So our dad worked mainly during the week
Yeah.
because we were in school.
We never
right?
saw Dad.
And then on the weekends, Carlos basically took care of the day shift, and then I took care of the evening shift on the weekends. Give him a break.
So I'm very grateful for the lessons that we learned there. But during our time there and meeting different people, my father, if you remember, on the book talks about the angels, right? And there was a very special man, Mr. Bob Richardson, and just talking to him, he told him that he used to be a builder and all that, and my father mentioned his goal of actually opening a construction company. Mr. Bob Richardson said, "It's not the right timing now, but I promise when the right time is happens, then I will let you know and I will help you." And when the right time was, he actually, Mr. Richardson, came to my father, told him, "Look, I'm going to sell you lot 323. This is the set of plans. This is the takeoff. This is the list of all the contractors. This is the how you get a permit. This is the everything."
Subcontractor list.
Subcontractor list. My father, the only thing he needed to go on. He had his business license from Colombia. Was able to transfer it. Back then, they would allow you to do so, and he did. Got his license transferred from Colombia, and he was in business, and he started the company. I joined. That's in 1991. I joined him while I was going to grad school. 3-4 months later, Anna did some work on the side, and then we started the construction company back in 91, 92. We really got involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and y'all just kept growing.
Well, I remember vividly
Picking up trash, cleaning houses. That Carlos was more of the inside operator. Like Dad always spent as much money as he could on communication. So we were like the first construction company around to have a walkie-talkie,
walkie-talkie,
the cell phone, the Nextel, the beeper, the pager. And so, that's how it kind of started, as Carlos being the hub in charge of construction.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really neat. So Dad was a field guy.
Yeah,
And
then after a while, kind of interesting. After a while, that's 91. We started growing. It started very gradual. We were going. Okay, the idea was build one house a year. My father said, "Well, if we can turn this into building maybe 3 or 4 or 5, we can actually make a good living." And then we started kind of picking up a number of homes. We had a real estate agent and a very, very fine couple, and they were doing work for us. And then I started kind of thinking maybe I can do that as well, because I know a lot about the homes. At that time, my wife actually joined us on the sales aspect of it and the marketing aspect of it. And then after that, we changed, like what we done, Sebastian, recently, changing some of our resources. We changed architects. We changed everything. Changed about the way the whole operation worked, from the sales, from the marketing, from the plans, from the design, and we really started to kind of pick up steam. Fast forward all the way to 1999, we started actually looking at possibilities we were buying lots now in bulk from a developer. So instead of just buying 1 or 2, we're actually buying lots in Ascension Parish, 15 at a time, 20 at a time, which was pretty unheard back then.
Yeah, that's big.
That was big time in 1999.
Still custom market though. So that,
it was
a big transition from a custom market to now.
It was
another learning experience, and I feel that some of that was taking some lessons from that. Custom world. We can still bring it into the Alvarez construction houses now at an affordable price.
So your dad wrote something here, and he's talking about his business, and he's talking about right at this time frame. And he says, by 1999, we had persevered, and we were now living the American dream, the dream that had been given to me many years ago through the visit of an American president to the palace of the Colombian president. I had seen in President Kennedy the possibilities of my life, even at a young age. I can still feel the excitement, the pounding of my heart as he approached. And finally, at age 62, I had some measure of security and the knowledge that my family would always have everything they wanted or needed. But for me, it was time to start giving back. Whew,
that's powerful, huh?
Oh, God.
That's.
I mean, just to know that he learned and resonated with the American dream from the president of the United States, JFK, is just so powerful. I was going to ask you to tell us how he executed on that desire to start giving back.
So in 1999, he was basically volunteered by the Home Builders Association to be the builder of the St. Jude Dream Home, because every year they would choose a builder to take on the project of building this house that is raffled off for the kids at St. Jude and raising money to run the hospital. So back in 99, that was our first St. Jude Dream Home. And fast forward 21 years, we're building our 21st St. Jude Dream Home.
Every single year.
Raised over about $24 million, helped with our, community partners and in the community to raise over $23 million.
Dad used to always say, as so long as St. Jude, he told us, all the way up to the end, if St. Jude provides a lot, you need to build the house. And that's, we still do.
As long as St. Jude wants us to build a house, we will be there. And it's pretty incredible. If we think about, guys, the fact that when we first started the St. Jude Dream Home, these were home, granted, it was 20 years ago, but the homes were $200,000. They were worth $200,000, and now we are giving away homes almost $750,000, $750,000, $750,000 for a free home for $100 raffle ticket.
That is unbelievable.
incredible.
Huh?
I didn't realize it had gotten.
We
Yeah.
haven't had a house under $500,000 for 15 years.
And it helps that Dad's vision, you know, even our trade partners, I mean, trade partners that we had for 25, 30 years, they're still the ones installing the sheetrock or donating the lumber or, you know. So his legacy has helped us really make it easy. Now Anna does all the grunt work.
She does all the
design
heavy
and,
lifting.
Yeah, all the heavy lifting. But
So
you know,
all of our suppliers, all of our vendors, like the plumbers and electricians that have been on board for 21 years, people ask other builders that build the dream home in other states, they ask me, well, do you reach out to them every year? And I tell them,
How difficult is it for them to come?
I said, they just automatically know that if we're building the house, they're
gonna come.
I'm expecting them to
That's
be
fantastic.
on board.
That is really staggering what that first house grew into, and
Yeah.
you know that is just amazing. And to know that that's a legacy that your father set in place for you guys to carry on. It's just fantastic. There's you're building houses, but Howard gets to the point where he wants to start doing the developments himself, right? And so you guys, that's your next step, you know.
That was our next step. Right after Katrina, we were negotiating a large purchase for our first tract of land, and Katrina came, and the price of land, skyrocketed. But we were able to close, and then we closed right on time for the 2008 hit. So it was very difficult. But we actually grew and expanded our operations and gained market share and continued to grow. So that was back when we developed the Lakes at Jamestown with close to 500 units of between detached single family home and some planned office and some land that was sold or traded to the city for some other
realignment
and all that. So it was an interesting piece of land. After that, we have developed other tracts of land. We also have kind of very good relationships with local developers that are committed to providing us with a supply of lots. So they're kind of ahead of us looking for land deals and providing lots to us. So we do a little combination of both.
Yeah, you can tell the pride that your father had when all three of y'all were now not only in the business, but were really all on the same page. And there's nothing that made him happier, right? I mean, it was great to read. But there's one last thing I wanted to, as it relates to your father in his book. He kind of summarizes it towards the end. Your father says, "If I have learned one thing in life, it is that there is truly no such thing as impossible. In the world where possibilities are endless, a man can indeed rise from the potato farm in Colombia to save a president. He can travel to a foreign country with only enough money to get to a bustling city like New York, enter a world where he does not speak the language, and then rise to millionaire status. If these things are possible for a man like me, then surely the word impossible does not exist." And I just love that.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. And I mean, you know, you talk about the American dream. I just don't think, there's a clearer story of how perfectly, your family history lives up to that. And so I enjoyed his book so much. I'm so grateful for all three of y'all coming in and
thank you for the
sharing
opportunity, please.
the stories.
Thank you.
And I look forward to getting you all back on another time and talk a little more about the progress which you guys have going right now is just stunning. It's so incredibly impressive. And everyone that I talk to, of course, knows you from your signs all over the state. But I did want to wrap up just by asking about the vision. What is the vision for the future of Alvarez Construction?
So, encompassing Dad's legacy, we worked really hard on our vision and mission statement. And so to kind of sum it up is, you know, Alvarez Construction exists, you know, to establish prosperity for our clients, number one. Number two, for our team members, because we believe that what we're doing is, you know, prosperity for them as well. And thirdly, for our nation's economy. So we kind of encompass that vision. We talk about it in the office. You know, we build together, we win together, and we give together. So it's kind of tying back to the first thing that Carlos said. I mean, all the way to the subcontractors, families, not just the husband, the wife, but the brother-in-law that he takes care of, or the children. So, I mean, we really think that not only are we giving back by building these houses, but we're helping the economy, stimulating the economy, and just overall good growth. That's kind of what our vision is.
Man, that sounds like something your father would say, right? I mean, just perfect. So it's not really, the vision is not, we plan to build X number of homes in 5 years or 10 years, so much as the things you just discussed.
Yeah, well, we do. So we do have a vision of why we exist, and then the mission and the strategy. So we do have a strategy that by the end of 2021, we'd build 600 homes, and we started that 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we are currently working on our strategy by delivering 600 homes in a professional and courteous manner.
Yeah, well, it appears that you're doing that very successful from everything that I see on social media and the reviews you've gotten for your business. So congratulations again.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Look, it's a true honor to have the three of you here, and I'm very grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome.
Take care.
We've all heard the stories of the immigrant who makes it to the United States to ultimately realize the American dream. And this is certainly that story. But in reading the book that Jairo Alvarez wrote, There's No Such Thing as Impossible, the backstory to how he ended up coming to America is just phenomenal. And we touched on just a few of those stories, just the tip of the iceberg. But I encourage you all to find that book, No Such Thing as Impossible, by Jairo Alvarez. And it's truly inspirational. And the fact that President JFK, who he had met in person in Colombia, was his inspiration, was just icing on the cake. So what the Alvarez family has accomplished is just amazing. What Carlos and Ana and Sebastian have achieved in the last 10 years is nothing short of stunning. And we look forward to getting them back on the podcast where we can keep up with their progress as they continue to march forward. The Alvarez family can be found online at alvarezconstruction.com. We appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to the Next Entrepreneur podcast. We'd like to thank our title sponsor, Mainspring Companies. It can be reached online at mainspringcompanies.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach us at ask@nxtentrepreneur.com. You can subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, or iHeartRadio. You can help support our podcasts by leaving a review on Apple Music. You can follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share this episode with your family and friends. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. They can be reached at propelyourstory.com. Today's episode was produced by Daniel Sagona.